It is easy to sort of like wind up going after every little thing that crosses your path, in the sense of reacting to all the things that cross your path on a daily basis. All right? It's easy to lose yourself in too many fights, too many battles. All right? Too many things that are getting your attention and too many things that are provoking you, especially when you're young. You see, when you're young, anything that sort of like stimulates you, anything just passing by, any trivial, inconsequential thing that stimulates you, makes you angry perhaps, that elicits a reaction from you, you tend to go after it. You know, this guy says something stupid, you know, something insulting, and you're like, hey, what do you have to say about that? Why are you saying this shit? Right, you know, something else happens that you don't really like. Your girlfriend does something that you don't really like, and you're like, hey, why are you doing that? And you wind up exhausting yourself. You wind up going after so many different stimuli, reacting to so many stimuli, that you exhaust yourself. You dissipate your energy. All right? Now, the thing is, see, when you're young, you have a surfeit of energy. And so sometimes, you know, that's just a natural thing that can't be avoided. Okay? So what you have to do, especially when you're young, you have to start thinking to yourself, what are the things that matter to me and what is inconsequential? And this extra energy that I have, I don't direct it to any stimulus that elicits a reaction out of me, but rather I channel it into something that is worthwhile. I exhaust myself in some task or activity that is worthwhile. Okay? Now, what I've just said is really a little bit abstract, so let me personalize it, or not personalize it, let me ground it so that you understand what I'm talking about. You wake up in the morning, right? You wake up and you go out. And you go out and you're walking down the street to wherever, maybe you're walking to the bus stop to go to work or whatever, and you know, somebody bumps you on the shoulder, some passing guy, some asshole, you know. You turn around and say, hey, what's the matter with you? And you start arguing with the guy. And you know, nothing happens much, just an exchange of words, but you're tired. You know, it saps your emotional energy. Then you get on the bus and the bus driver doesn't stop at your stop, and you're like, hey, what's the matter with you? And you exhaust yourself further. And you start getting into little arguments, little tiffs, allowing your emotional energy to be sapped by trivia that is happening in your life. How many times does that happen to you? Perhaps you don't verbalize it. Perhaps, you know, the bus driver, asshole that he is, doesn't stop at your stop, but stops, you know, 200 yards further on down, and so you have to walk the 200 yards down, and you're walking those 200 yards down, and you're mumbling to yourself, that fucking asshole, you know, he did this to me, he left me 200 yards, and I rang the button. Why? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to yourself? You see? Because when you engage with any stimulus that crosses your path, you are automatically investing emotional energy into that thing, whatever it may happen to be, okay? That emotional energy, well, it is finite, and you need to use that emotional energy for things that are truly important, okay? Truly important things like developing yourself, developing your career, your education, getting ahead in life. That is important, okay? You have to pick your fights. You have to pick your battles. You have to pick and choose what things you're going to invest emotional capital in, okay? Emotional energy in. Now, one of the things that you should never invest emotional energy in is women. And I'll explain why. Because there is always a woman around. Always. All right? And you invest emotional energy and you know, you're up, you're down, this and that, and you become like an emotional yo-yo over this woman or a bunch of women. It doesn't matter. Okay? It doesn't matter how many women you have in your life. If you can have 0 or 1,000. Okay? But if you allow yourself to be emotionally invested in your relationships with women, you're going to go up and down and you're going to be exhausted. Don't do that. Pick your battles. Okay? Now, something happened on the YouTube. There's this YouTuber. I'm gonna do a quick video about it after I'm finished with this video. But there's this YouTuber, Crown T, fucking idiot, and he did like this whole video attacking the alt-right. Okay? He is investing a whole truckload of energy into that particular battle. And he hasn't stopped to think, why is he doing this? What advantage will he gain by supposedly winning in this battle? You see? Because that's the other thing about picking your battles. When you decide on a battle, you have to ask yourself, what am I going to get out of this if I win? What will I lose if this battle doesn't go my way? You see? For instance, for example, you're at your job and your boss suggests that you do something this way. Okay? And you say, well, if I did it this way, you think to yourself, if I did it this way, it would be better. It would be better for me or better for the company or just better. Okay? Now, you have to ask yourself, is it worth having the argument with your boss? See, if it's trivial, if the boss says, just put the paperclip on the right side instead of the left side, okay, fine, it's trivial, right? If it's major, if the boss is like, oh, we should pursue this business, and you're like, no, maybe this business would be better. Well, you see, you have to pick your battle because you have a finite number of fights in you. Just like a prize fighter. See, in boxing, most fighters know how many fights they've got in them. Okay? Major fights, that is. Because in boxing, you'll find out about this probably if you don't know about boxing, but in boxing, most of the fights are just, filler. But in a fighter's life and a boxer's life, he's going to have a few fights that are really going to demand his all of them. Because most of the time, a fighter is either fighting somebody whom he outclasses or who outclasses him, right? But there are some fights where he's going to be up against somebody of his equal level. It doesn't matter how high or low, but it's going to be of his equal level. And that fight is really going to drain him, okay? And that is the fight that he's going to put his all. And whoever wins that fight, well, he's going to take a step up, okay? Those are the crucial fights. And a fighter has a finite number of fights in him. He's got, maybe 6 or 7 of those key fights in him where he has to lay it all out there. Just put it all out, okay? You have to be thinking the same thing. You have to be thinking that in any given situation, with any given set of people, you have a finite number of fights in you. When I was young, I used to fight over every little fucking thing. I was a fool because I was young, and I would fight over every little comma, every little trivial shit because I wanted it exactly my way, okay? Because I'm a control freak, okay? And control freaks tend to do that because they tend to lose sight of the big picture. And they focus on every little thing that they want just the way they want it because it fulfills some sort of weird emotional need, which I have, by the way. I don't have it as much anymore. I've grown out of it, and on the other hand, I've disciplined myself to know that some things are not very important, okay? I mean, some things that they don't matter. But when I was young, I didn't realize this. And so I would fight every little fucking thing. Don't be like that. Don't be like that. It's something that I learned in my 30s, but that you can learn in your 20s, even in your teens. You have to, in every situation, you have to stop and say, what am I fighting over? That's the first question. And then the second question is, if I win, will it be to my benefit? Or if I win this argument, will it be to my detriment? Which can often happen. And you see, you always have to be making that calculation. Will it help me? Will it hurt me? If I win, am I really winning? Or is it better to cede the point and I gain something else? Because a lot of times, you have one person wants one thing and you want a different thing, right? And sometimes what they want is very important to them and for you it's trivial. And so if you just cede it to them, you actually win. You see? Think of it in those terms. Think that sometimes winning is actually losing, and sometimes ceding, forfeiting the fight is actually a win. Because in a human relationship, in a human dynamic, that is often the case. We are constantly negotiating with one another. All right? We are in constant negotiations, and we are negotiating both short-term and long-term. The nitty-gritty at this particular moment, and the thing that will come back to haunt us or help us a year down the line. You see? So what you always want to be thinking is that in any relationship, in any disagreement with any person, because at the end of the day, you are only going to have disagreements with other people, right? You're not going to have disagreements with like the chair or the door, right? You're going to have disagreements with other people. You're going to want one thing and they're going to want something else. Think what you are aiming for in your relationship. What do you want out of this relationship long term? And once you have figured that out, then you realize short term, I can afford to let this slide. Or perhaps this short term issue will have long term implications and you want to win this fight. That's perfectly fine. In fact, you have to do that. Okay? So how do I explain this like in a more grounded sense so that you get the picture? Like, again, the boss situation. You have the boss, and let's say that you have the boss's boss also is in the picture, he's floating out there. So your boss says, we should do A. And you say, no. If we do A, we're going to lose money as a company. We should do B. And you fight this because you're convinced that you're right. And you're thinking to yourself, if we do A, we're going to lose. And I want to make it clear to everybody that I was against A, I was in favor of B. Two possibilities. Either you are, your opinion is acknowledged but dismissed and they do A and they lose money. Or they do B and they win money. Okay? Now, if they do A and they lose money, after the fact, the bosses of the boss, he's going to be thinking, well, you know, Shorty here, he said that A was going to lose money, and lo and behold, it lost money. So you're going to gain credibility. Okay? Now, if people do B and it makes money, you're going to gain credibility too. You're going to gain credibility at the expense of your relationship with your boss, because your boss who advocated A, which is a money loser, he's going to be pissed at you that A, number one, you went against him. Number two, that you were right. And number three, potentially, that instead of doing A that the boss wanted, they do B because that's what you advocated and they listen to you rather than to him. See? So you're going to antagonize your relationship with your boss, but you are going to make your relationship with your boss's boss stronger. You see? And that's how you take over your boss's job. See? But see, suppose the same thing happens, but there's no boss's boss. He's unaware of this argument going on. It's just you and the boss, right? And the conversation is sealed. Perhaps some of your peers and even underlings see this argument going on. How is this helping you? Because at the end of this event, of this fight, you're not going to get anything out of it. See, because the boss's boss doesn't know about this going on. The only person in authority who knows about it is your boss, and he's going to be pissed off at you. What do you think is going to happen to you? You're going to be fucking fired. That's what's going to happen. Or if not fired, you're going to get tripped up. Your career is going to be hurt. You know, your boss is going to make sure that, you know, you never forget the fact that you went against the boss. See? On top of that, if the boss's boss is not there, if it's just you and your boss is insistent on A, they're never going to implement B. So what exactly was the point of having this fight? They were never going to implement your position, and the only thing you achieved was antagonizing your boss. You didn't gain anything. You see? You see what I'm saying? This happens a lot. This happens so often of guys who fight their boss, but with no ulterior upside to it, only downside. You see? So that's why you have to always be calculating the fight that you're having. What benefit will you gain from it? If it's just you and your boss says A and you're like, well, you know, maybe B would be better, and your boss overrides you, let it slide. Because there's nobody else around to help you. Is the boss's boss here? Is the board of directors around to watch you be so wise as to go against your boss? No? Then what is it going to help you? See? Like, for instance, You're in class and you argue with the professor about whatever. You know, he says something stupid, you know, something like, you know, all leftists are good and all right-wingers are evil. Some shit like that, right? And you start to argue with your professor. What are you gaining from it? What, your peers are going to think you're cool. So what? Who gives you your grade? Your peers or the professor? Huh? Think. See? And this is something I'm talking to you, in point of fact, I'm berating myself. Because I remember when I was a young shithead, you know, arguing with people for no benefit to myself. Don't make my mistake. Don't make my mistake. Pick your battles. Pick your battles, and in any battle, in any engagement, know exactly how you are going to win. If you can't figure out how you're going to win, don't engage. Don't get in the fight. Don't do it. Step back. Just say, This Kraut guy, for instance, I'm going to do a video about him, like I said before. I'm just itching to do it. But anyway, this Kraut guy, he's picking a fight with the alt-right, with the 4chan alt-righters, okay? The big, you know, autistic savants, you know, weaponize autism, those guys, right? He's picking a fight for what purpose? What is he going to gain? Nothing. See? That's why he's a fucking idiot. Because he's got nothing to gain. See? If he had something to gain, well, okay. But what? He's going to fight with the alt-right. And just say for the sake of argument that he's actually correct. What? So he antagonizes all of 4chan. How is that helpful? And the other possibility, of course, which is actually what's happening, is that he makes a fool of himself. He makes a fool of himself and loses more and more credibility, more and more subscribers. I mean, as I'm watching, he's lost like 300 subscribers so far, just this morning. And, you know, it's like, what time is it? It's 11 in the morning here in London. So that's what, 7 in the morning? No, 6 in the morning in New York, you know. In the US, they're just waking up. And his audience in the US, as the morning and the afternoon progress, you know, he's going to start losing subscribers, bleeding subscribers again. Because he picked a fight that he couldn't win. And even if he could win it, there was nothing to be gained. Don't be like that. Be smart. See? Because remember, as I said before, you have a limited number of fights in you. Make them count.